It was December the 5th, 2003. The victim was pretty. The accused was tall and handsome, and he was her lover. The crime was murder, and its nature salacious. It had everything to guarantee intense media interest and scrutiny, and the public, hungry for sensational news, not only feasted on it, but speculated and debated it, clouding most of the information in smoke and mirrors. This is a tragic tale of Noritta Samsudin, a young woman from rural Malaysia. Attracted by the bright lights of the city, Noritta came to Kuala Lumpur to make a life for herself, only to meet her death. Did her tall and handsome lover murder Noritta? Let's find out.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy, and silently, it could build and build until you finally see, whoa, it's taking over.
Hello my true crime friends, and thanks for dropping by my channel, where I share true crime stories that have reached out to me. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you and welcome back. It's much appreciated. If you find my video interesting, please consider subscribing to my channel. When subscribing, click on the notification bell so you won't miss any of my future uploads. Please also like and share this video. It will help this channel tremendously. I've obtained information for this video from multiple sources online, and as such I'm unable to verify the accuracy of the information. So please do your own research. As I'm discussing murder, some may find the content disturbing. Viewer discretion is therefore advised. Now, having said that, grab yourself a hot or cold drink, sit back and dive with me into today's case of Noritta Samsudin. This murder took place in my country, Malaysia. Malaysia consists of the peninsula of Malaya, together with the countries of Sabah and Sarawak, both of which are located on the island of Borneo. Malaysia is a multiracial, multicultural and multi-religious country and has been so for many years. It is one of Southeast Asia's most vibrant economies and is home to the Petronas Twin Towers, a set of twin skyscrapers that are the world's largest twin structures. We have an equatorial climate with an average annual temperature of 25 degrees centigrade and abundant rainfall. Just listen to the sound of the rain. We are proud of our lush and dense evergreen rainforests and our rare Malayan tiger. Just look at this magnificent animal. Ours is a very friendly country, and we welcome tourists to experience our hospitality, our delicious cuisine, and our most beautiful sights. The dynamic city of Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia, is where our story takes place. But it starts somewhere else. It starts in the lush green rice field states of northern Peninsula Malaysia, where Noritta Samsudin was born in either the state of Perlis or Kedah. Noritta was the third of 4 siblings. She was a clever girl who obtained 5 A's in her primary school assessment. Being good in sports, especially in basketball, she opted to go to a school in another northern state called Kelantan, where she was selected to play basketball for her school. Added to that, Noritta was also an athlete, favoring the 100-meter and 200-meter dash. While she was studying there, her family moved to the state of Kedah, leaving Noritta behind in Kelantan to finish her high school education. Her father said that Noritta was an independent girl, quite capable of taking care of herself. Her mother described her as being gentle, caring, and concerned for her family. Her favorite food was ketam lemak, which is a dish of crabs cooked in a spicy coconut gravy. After school, Noritta completed a diploma in business administration in the Mara Institute of Technology at its campus in Perlis, which is another northern state that adjoins Kedah. Like many rural girls, young girls, Noritta must have longed for the bright lights of the city where she imagined that she could earn good money, be independent, and enjoy the life of a city girl, and perhaps meet and fall in love with her Prince Charming. She followed her dreams and came to Kuala Lumpur in 2002. She obtained a job as a marketing executive in a company called Syarikat Transpro Sindiran Berhad, where she earned 2,000 ringgit per month. She also worked as a part-time model, but nothing very much is known about this. In July 2003, she moved to share an apartment with two others on the 7th floor of an upmarket condominium called Condominium Puncak Prima Galleria in Sri Hartamas, Kuala Lumpur. Her housemates were a couple, a man named Kenneth Yap and his girlfriend Noor Azura. The master bedroom was occupied by Noor Azura and Kenneth, who appears to be the main tenant. Noritta occupied another bedroom for which she paid a rent of 550 ringgit per month to Kenneth. It appears that Noritta soon made plenty of friends, and she apparently did indeed meet her Prince Charming. He was reportedly a Chinese businessman named Lim Sin Kian Childs. About a week before she died, Noritta visited her family in Kedah for the celebration of Hari Raya Puasa, which is also known as Eid. And she informed her family that she was planning to get married in the following year. Now, Noritta's family had met Lim in Singapore on a family holiday. The family approved of him. According to Noritta's sister, they looked really happy together as a couple. This young girl, Noritta, had a whole life ahead of her. Although Noritta told her family at the end of November 2003 that she was getting married soon to Lim, she was actually dating someone else. Curious, right? The man's name was Hanif Basree, and they had met at a karaoke lounge called the Crystal Club Karaoke, where Azura worked. Now, we know very little about Hanif Basree. We know that he was 36 years old when he met Noritta. A handsome man, he weighed 100 kilograms and stood 6 feet 2 inches tall, which is very tall for a Malaysian man. He was an engineer with the Shah Alam City Council and a former volleyball player who played for Malaysia. But he was married. Oh yes, he was married to a woman named Noritta Muhammad, with whom he had children. Now, the soon-to-be married Noritta and the much-married Hanif's dating became sexual on their third date. From October 2003, they were seeing each other at least twice a week, with each date ending with Hanif spending the night with Noritta. The affair carried on until Noritta was murdered. Hanif appears to be special to Noritta because she had a photo of him in her phone. So what's the story with Lim? We'll soon find out. Apart from Hanif Basree, Noritta was also reported to have met another married man in the course of her job. He was apparently a manager in a government agency who had pursued Noritta relentlessly. At first, Noritta refused his advances, but she later accepted dinner invitations from him, although her friends and family advised her against it. After a couple of dinners, she backed off. Now that enraged the man, and you know what he did? He sent hate mail to her office, threatening either to kill her or to throw acid on her face. Noritta, however, didn't take these threats seriously and didn't report them to the police. So, Noritta was quite busy towards the end of 2003, juggling her fiancé, her lover, and her scorned admirer. On Thursday, 4th of December 2003, Noritta's housemates Azora and Kenneth left the apartment at about midnight and went to the Viva Club in a hotel called the Eastern Hotel. While they were there, they met up with a friend, Miko Kauko Johannes Hava. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. If I'm not, please forgive me. He was a Finnish businessman in Kuala Lumpur at that time. Kenneth and Azura left the club at about 3:40 a.m. for their apartment, which was about 20 or 30 minutes away. They entered their condominium at about 4:30 a.m. and walked into semi-darkness. This was curious, as it was agreed among the three housemates that the light in the dining area should be left on whenever someone is out of the apartment. They also detected a very unpleasant smell, which was also very curious. Azura associated the smell with a foul body odor. The foul smell was still obvious along the corridor that led to the dining area. This was the first time that Azura had encountered that awful smell. She thought that Noritta probably had a visitor. Kenneth went to check if there were any visitors' shoes on the shoe rack, but he didn't find any. Without switching on the light, Kenneth and Azura made their way to their room in the partial darkness. Just before they entered their room, Azura glimpsed the silhouette of a tall, dark figure in her peripheral vision to the right. "Who's that?" She saw the figure walk out of the apartment. "Kenneth, did you see someone leaving the apartment just now?" "No. You're imagining things, Azura." But Azura was quite sure of what she saw. She strode to the front door and found it unlocked. "Kenneth, the door is unlocked. You locked it, right?" "Yes, I did." "Well, it's unlocked now." Curiouser and curiouser, as Alice said in Wonderland. Kenneth and Azora called Noritta's name, but there was no answer. Feeling uneasy, Azora asked Kenneth to check with the security guards if anyone had visited the apartment earlier. After Kenneth had gone down to inquire, Azura noticed that the door to Noritta's room was slightly open, and so she peeped in and turned the light switch on. She saw some items strewn about and called out Noritta's name, "Ita, Ita, Ita," but there was no answer. So, Nor Azura entered Noritta's room. There was a comforter on Noritta's bed. Azura pulled away the comforter and, to her utmost horror, saw Noritta's completely naked body face down on the mattress. Not only was she completely naked, her head was inside a pillowcase. Imagine that. That was not all. Her hands were tied at the back with the cord of an electric iron, while both her legs were tied with a similar cord and a black bra. There was neither movement nor sound from Noritta. A panicked Azura bolted out of Noritta's bedroom and into her own, where she opened a window and yelled out, "Kenneth! Kenneth! Come back! Come back!" She also hurried to her neighbor's apartment and rang their doorbell, but no one answered. Well, it was after 4:30 a.m. She then called her Finnish friend Mikko. She knew that he would be awake because she just had drinks with him. She walked back to her bedroom while she called Mikko, and it was there that she saw a man walk towards the guardhouse while putting his shirt on. She thought that he looked like the man she had seen earlier in her apartment. She shouted at him, "Bastard, stop! I think you're a killer." but the man just kept walking. She shouted to the guards to stop him and dashed down to confront the man, but she couldn't see him anywhere. The man had fled. Nora was frightened, angry, and disappointed that the security guards didn't see the man. Kenneth arrived and asked Dhanabalan, the head security guard, to accompany them back to the apartment. All three then went into Noritta's room. Kenneth called her Ita, Ita, Ita. When she didn't respond, Kenneth untied the pillowcase covering her head. This was when they saw a bolster case covering her mouth and tied at the back of her head. When he removed it, a face towel that was rolled into a ball fell out of her mouth. Kenneth rushed to retrieve a knife from the kitchen with which he cut the cord that secured Noritta's hands, all the while fruitlessly calling her name. Their friend Miko, whom Azura had earlier called, arrived at the scene. Noticing that Noritta's lips had turned blue, he suggested CPR. Both Kenneth and Miko then turned Noritta over and tried unsuccessfully to resuscitate her. They finally realized that Noritta was deceased and called 999, the Malaysian Emergency Services number. The police came and collected items of interest that they located in Noritta's bedroom. These were 3 samples of seminal fluid that they cut out from Noritta's mattress, 11 pieces of tissue paper recovered from a waste paper basket. Some of them were still wet, and the cords and bra that was used to tie Noritta's hands and feet. These were sent for forensic testing, while Noritta's body was sent for a post-mortem. What was again curious in this case was that there were no discernible fingerprints found in Noritta's bedroom. The police also sought the help of the canine unit. The dog handler came about 5:30 a.m. with his German Shepherd, Lennox. Lennox sniffed in front of Noritta's apartment and then followed a scent to the emergency exit of her floor. He then went down the staircase to the ground floor, sniffed at some plants and along some drains, while coming to a stop at a fence beyond which was a main road. He circled round a few times near the fence and then stopped. So, if it was the intruder's scent that Lennox was following, he lost it at the fence. In any event, the dog handler later testified that he couldn't say if the scent was that of the murderer because many people had gone in and out of Noritta's room. Now, the fact that Noritta's apartment was not broken into led the police to believe that she knew her murderer. So they turned their attention on all those who knew her. The 7th of November 2003 started out like any other day for Hanif Basree until he saw his name splashed in the newspapers connected with Noritta's murder. The blood must have frozen in his veins. Imagine his wife's absolute horror. Hanif had felt safe in his marriage as his wife knew nothing about his involvement with Noritta. But now she will know the details, and added to his grief was the fact that the police were looking for him. He was a murder suspect, from lover boy to murder suspect. As he saw his world collapse around him, he must have shuddered, thinking about the very different world that he was about to enter. Anyway, Hanif did the right thing and handed himself in at the Brickfields police station on the 8th of December 2003. In due course, police also identified other people as likely suspects, including Kenneth, Azora, Lim Sin Ken Chimes, Suhaimi Sanusi, Hairul Anwar, Shaful Azman, Miko Kauko, and even the security guards Suzaki Supok, Tanapalan, Gopal, and 2 other guards. Their specimens together with a specimen of Noritta's boss, were taken and sent for DNA testing. The police just rounded up everybody who knew Noritta. They wanted to make sure that no one slipped through the net that they had cast. Of these people detained, Lim, Hanif Basree, Suhaimi Sanusi and Khairul Anwar were supposedly Noritta's boyfriends, according to the police. Suhaimi Sanusi and Khairul Anwar, however, denied that they had a romantic relationship with Noritta. You remember, it was reported that Noritta and Lim were planning to get married in the following year. Well, Lim turned out to be a married man, and he testified in court that he and Noritta had a platonic relationship. He said that he was very, very close to Noritta and had visited her apartment several times. He didn't know anything about her private life and spoke mainly about her work with her. He said that he had met Noritta and Azora at the Crystal Club karaoke. He and Noritta hit it off and saw each other 2 to 3 times a week. He had met her family and had spent a holiday with Noritta, her mother and her sister in Singapore the year before. But there was nothing romantic between them. They were strictly platonic friends who were fond of each other. What was that all about? By the conclusion of the police investigations, all the suspects had been released at different intervals, with the exception of Hanif Basree. The 2 security guards, Suzaki Supo and Thanapalan Gopal, who were detained and kept in custody for 3 days, were also released. Hanif was then charged with murdering Noritta sometime between 1:30 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. on Friday, 5th December 2003. On the 26th of December 2003, Hanif pleaded not guilty in the High Court. It is interesting that he was charged even before the DNA results were available. It was as if, as far as the police were concerned, Hanif was their man and they were going to go all out to have him convicted. This was the argument of his defense team. The findings of the pathologist, which was testified to in court, were that Noritta died of asphyxiation. She was tied up post-mortem, that is, after she had passed away. She had bruises on her thighs that were probably caused by someone big and heavy pressing their knees on her thighs, and this was done prior to death. Noritta had both vaginal and anal sex less than 72 hours before her death, and sex was consensual. Death by asphyxiation was caused by her tongue collapsing due to the force of the face towel being stuffed into her mouth, thereby causing her to choke and become asphyxiated. Her suffocation was not due to sexual asphyxia. Now, there was some speculation that Noritta was indulging in some kind of BDSM. Now, that was ruled out. Her death was a homicide. She was deliberately suffocated. The pathologist collected specimens of Noritta's blood, vaginal and anal swabs, and fingernails and sent them for DNA testing. The chemist to whom the DNA samples were sent later testified about the results of the DNA profiling. He said that the face towel that fell out of Noritta's mouth had mixed DNA profiles of at least 3 persons, of which Noritta was the main contributor, Hanif an intermediate contributor, and there was also present the DNA profile of an unknown male who contributed 5%. Only Noritta's DNA was found on the second face towel that was stuffed into Noritta's mouth. There were seminal stains recovered from the bolster case which had Hanif's DNA profile. The DNA profiles from the non-sperm cells recovered from the seminal stains belonged to both Noritta and Hanif. Out of the 11 pieces of tissue recovered from the waste paper basket, 8 contained seminal fluid with sperm and had Hanif's DNA profile on them, while the non-sperm cells contained both Noritta's and Hanif's DNA profiles. Seminal stains which were found on the bed sheet contained the DNA profiles of both Noritta and Hanif, and this was the same with the seminal stains found on the comforter. The semen stains from the cut portions of the mattress contained the DNA profiles of both Noritta and Hanif. Only the DNA profile of the unknown male was recovered from the bolster and from the black bra. The fingernail clippings from Noritta's right hand had the DNA profiles of Noritta and Hanif. The fingernail clippings from her left hand had the DNA profiles of Noritta, Hanif, and the unknown male. The strand of hair recovered from Noritta's comforter and bedsheet had the DNA profile of the same unknown male. The cord used to tie Noritta's hand had the DNA profiles of both Noritta and the same unknown male. Noritta's rectal swab had the DNA profile of the unknown male. Another cotton swab had the DNA profile of Noritta and the unknown male. Swabs from Noritta's upper and lower ends of her vagina contained the DNA profiles of Noritta, Hanif, and the unknown male. With regard to the seminal stain on the swab of her upper vagina, the chemist determined Hanif to be the major contributor, Noritta as the intermediate contributor, and the unknown male as a minor contributor, contributing 10 to 15%. Now, the chemist could not say conclusively that Hanif was the last person to have had sex with Noritta, but he agreed with Hanif's lawyer that sperm and DNA material would remain longer in the upper vagina, while the lower vagina will normally contain more recently ejaculated semen. As you can see, the forensic testing cleared the suspects that had earlier been identified by the police, except Hanif Basree. But what about the unknown male? Well, the police never identified him. Now, it was crucial to the prosecution's case that Hanif was at the condominium in the early hours of December the 5th when Noritta was murdered, and they were depending on the security guards to testify to that fact. Security guard Suzaki Suppo was detained as a suspect on 17th of December for 3 days. While in custody, he remembered what actually happened and gave another statement to the police to the effect that Hanif had come to the condominium at about 1 a.m. on 5th December. He saw Noritta and Hanif talking to 2 Malay couples who had arrived in a white Kancil car, and he didn't see Hanif leave. He was then alerted at about 4:30 a.m. about the break-in and the murder. The same thing happened with Dalapalan Gopal, a security guard who was in charge of the shift. He never made any reference to Hanif being in the condominium in the early hours of the 5th of December when he was questioned on the day of the murder. He maintained that when he was interviewed the second time and gave a second statement to the same effect. He was also detained for 3 days. It was during these 3 days in custody that he suddenly remembered that he did see Hanif together with Noritta at the condominium at about 1 a.m. on the 5th of December, and he saw them talking to 2 Malay couples who had come in a white Kancil car. Now, after Hanif gave himself up, he gave a statement to the police on the 18th of December 2003 regarding his whereabouts for the 24 hours preceding Noritta's death. According to his statement, he picked Noritta up from a condominium at about 10:15 p.m. on Wednesday, the 3rd of December 2003 and went to the Hard Rock Cafe. They were accompanied by some of Hanif's friends. Noritta and Hanif left the Hard Rock Cafe at about 1:30 a.m. and went back to Noritta's apartment where they had sex twice. He left her apartment at about 3:30 a.m. and went straight home to sleep. The both of them had telephone conversations the next morning when she told him that she was at the National Electric Company's Hari Raya open house in Kuala Lumpur as the Eid celebrations were ongoing. He then left his office at 4:30 p.m. and went home to sleep. He woke up at about 6:30 p.m. and drove his daughter for her tuition class. He then dropped his wife off at the train station, and after that he picked his daughter up from her tuition class. When he went home, his brother-in-law was at his house with his fiancée and a friend. While he was chatting with them, his brother's sister-in-law arrived. They all chatted together until 10:30 p.m. After they left, he watched some television and then went to sleep. The next day was December the 5th. His friend called him at about 10 a.m. and told him that he had heard from the lounge manageress of the Crystal Club Karaoke that Noritta had been murdered. The police then asked him the inevitable question, "Did you kill Noritta?" To which he replied no. And he also replied that he did not know who killed Noritta. His wife and his relatives all confirmed his version of events. However, the new statements of the guards saying that Hanif was at the condominium in the early hours of December 5th effectively destroyed Hanif's alibi. Hanif's murder trial commenced on the 6th of May 2004. The prosecution's case hinged on, firstly, Hanif's confession that he had a sexual relationship with Noritta. Secondly, the collaborating DNA evidence. Thirdly, that Hanif had cut his nails and shaved his pubic hair, which, according to the prosecution, showed that he wanted to destroy all evidence connecting him to the crime. Fourthly, Hanif had asked the police whether his DNA would link him to Noritta's bedroom. And lastly, and most crucially, the statements that the police took from the security guards, Suzaki and Dhanapalan, while they were in custody, to the effect that both of them saw Hanif at the condominium during the wee hours of the 5th of December 2003. They didn't see Hanif leave because, according to the prosecution, Hanif, being tall, was able to scale the wall of the condominium and escape into the darkness. However, the fact of the earlier contradictory statements were elicited during cross-examination by Hanif's counsel. The guards maintained that what they recollected in custody was true and that they had both lied when they were interviewed on the day of the murder and on later events. But the damage was done. Their testimony was soundly discredited. The prosecution also offered a motive for the murder. Now, the prosecution does not have to prove motives to establish guilt, but it helps if there is a reason for the murder. Usually, the first question one asks is why, isn't it? According to the prosecution, the thought of Noritta being involved with Lim so filled Hanif with jealousy that it drove him to kill not Lim, but Noritta. The prosecution maintained this even after Lim testified that what he had was a platonic relationship with Noritta. The prosecution closed its case on the 19th of June 2004 after 28 days and 34 witnesses. Now, under the Malaysian Criminal Procedure Code, at the conclusion of the prosecution's case, the court has to consider whether the prosecution has made out a prima facie case against the accused. A prima facie case is a case on the face of it, i.e. a basic case. This is premised upon the principle that an accused has a right to remain silent. This is a right afforded to accused persons against self-discrimination. If the prosecution has not made out a prima facie case, then the court must acquit the accused. If the prosecution has made out a prima facie case against the accused, then the court must call upon the accused to enter his defense to the charge. The meaning of prima facie was not defined in the Malaysian Criminal Procedure Code at the time of Hanif's trial. It has since been defined. At the time of Hanif's case, to decide if the prosecution had made out a prima facie case, the judge had to ask himself the question that if he asks the accused to enter his defense and the accused remains silent, can he convict the accused on just the prosecution's evidence? In other words, if the accused does not rebut any of the prosecution's evidence, can the court convict him based solely on the entirety of the prosecution's evidence? The defense submitted that the judge could not, and as such, that the prosecution had failed to make out a prima facie case against Hanif, and that the prosecution had charged the wrong man. The judge reserved his decision. On the 1st of July 2004, the judge decided that the prosecution had not made out a prima facie case against Hanif. Hanif was therefore not called upon to enter his defense, and the judge accordingly acquitted him of the charge of murder. The judge's decision was obviously the correct decision. The only thing that the court could accept was that Noritta was murdered. The judge couldn't accept that Hanif murdered her based on the prosecution's evidence because the chemist, who is a prosecution witness, could not say conclusively that Hanif was the last person to have had sex with Noritta. Moreover, only the DNA profile of the unknown male was recovered from the bolster case used to tie her face. Only the DNA profile of the unknown male was recovered from the black bra that is used to secure her legs, which, according to the chemist, was done after Noritta's death. The cord used to tie Noritta's hands had the DNA profiles of Noritta and the same unknown male. Noritta's rectal swab had the DNA profile of the unknown male, which means that the unknown male was the one who had anal sex with Noritta. As the bra and the cord had only Noritta's and the unknown male's DNA, and Noritta's hands and feet were bound after her death, it must mean that the unknown male was the last person to have sex with Noritta. So according to forensic science, the silent witness, it is the unknown male who had the last contact with Noritta. Also, the testimony of the two guards who were the star witnesses for the prosecution was discredited by the defense. The judge rightly decided that they were both unreliable and untruthful witnesses, and their testimony was rejected. Both Kenneth and Nor Azura testified that Hanif didn't have a foul body odor. The defense explained this away by saying that the physical acts of having sex, committing murder, and tying up Noritta's legs and hands and legs would have caused Hanif to exude a foul body odor. This was rejected as not being supported by even an iota of evidence. Nor Azura also testified that the person she saw in a peripheral vision was dark-skinned, while Hanif had a lighter complexion. In the light of the forensic evidence, the fact that Hanif did not have a foul body odor, and the fact that the contradictory testimony of the security guards were not credulous, the foundation of the prosecution's case fell like a house of cards. The prosecution appealed to the Court of Appeal and lost. They then appealed to the Federal Court, which is Malaysia's apex court, and lost there as well. With the decision of the federal court, Hanif Basree was truly a free man. He is reported as saying that he hoped to have an unending chance to smell the air of freedom. If the prosecution had seriously pursued the unknown male, Noritta would have found justice and her family would have had closure. Further, Hanif and his family would not have had to go through the nightmare that they did. I'm sure that Hanif is not proud of his adultery and must regret it with every ounce of his being. But the fact is, he was not guilty of murder. As I said earlier, this case was the talk of the town. The reporting by the media of this case did not go uncriticized because of the intimate sexual details that were reported. Seeing how the media were covering the case, the then Malaysian Information Minister criticized the reporting of the case and asked the media to have some consideration for the victim's family. As far as the search for the murderer is concerned, the police say that they have not given up and that they are continuing their investigations. While this is good news, the fact remains that there has been no developments in the case, which is now 20 years old. Noritta's unfortunate demise remains one of Malaysia's most famous unsolved murders. We must keep Noritta's case and other unsolved cases in the public mind, lest they are forgotten and the victims forever denied the justice that is due to them. Noritta's family has had to live without closure and also put up with rumors that were rife about her alleged relationships and unconventional lifestyle. We don't know if they were true, and in any event, it is nobody's business. As for Hanif, it looks like his wife stood by her man and life carries on for them. According to my research, he is still very much involved with volleyball, holding a position in the Malaysian Volleyball Association. Hanif and his wife will grow old together, counting their blessings each day. But life stopped for Noritta. She will be forever 22, forever pretty, and forever raring to go. Thank you for staying with me on this deep dive. Until I see you again with another video, take care, be vigilant, and be kind. Bye.